Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Sami Parvez show. Today, I'm joined by Ro Taylor, and this is the second time Taylor is joining me on the Sami Parvez show. He is the leader of the Christian Heritage Party and also running in this BC provincial election as the candidate for Bulkley Valley-Stikine. We will be discussing about his campaign goals for this BC provincial election. Thank you so much, Mr. Taylor, for joining me on the Sami Parvez show. It's a great pleasure to have you another time. We had a chat last time, and this is our second conversation. And you are the second leader of a party who is appearing for second time on the Sami Parvez show.
Yes, thank you. And actually, I'm appearing as a double leader as well. I am serving as the national leader of the
Mhm.
Christian Heritage Party of Canada, and I also am currently serving as the provincial leader of the Christian Heritage Party of British Columbia. So it's that's a little confusing for people, but we see there's huge problems both in Victoria,
Mhm.
our provincial capital, and in Ottawa, our national capital. And so both the governments in Victoria and in Ottawa are both governments with a very poor focus. That neither government, well, we call it a culture of death. Neither government is interested in protecting innocent human life. Neither the Victoria government nor the Ottawa is interested in protecting traditional marriage and traditional family values, freedom of speech, freedom of conscience, and those types of things. Both governments have moved against the citizens and imposed unfair and unjust regulations, restrictions, mandates on the people of, in the case of British Columbia citizens or on the citizens of Canada. So right now, I'm speaking to you. We're in the midst of a provincial campaign.
Mhm.
So I'm coming primarily representing the province of BC as the leader of CHP BC.
Mhm. I think you are the only leader who is leading both ways, in provincial and federal ways. And
Yeah.
let's talk about you. You are right running as a candidate for Bulky Valley Stikine. And so what do you see? Like what are the main problems for that riding?
Well, if we talk locally, there's a lot of concern about land use, and the government in Victoria has done a lot of harm to the citizens of BC by raising a lot of questions about land use, about water rights for farmers, and there's a local issue here, the Sasko River Bridge. Sasko River Road, it just happens to be one of the issues going on in our riding at this time. But the government has been pushing an agenda to change, to build a new bridge across the Bulkley River at a different location, which would require the residents of the Saskwa Valley to drive an extra, I think it's about an extra half hour or so to get to the nearest town, which is Hazelton. And so I attended a meeting in Hazelton about this. The Ministry of Forests, which controls the Saskwa River Road and Bridge, they were adamant that they were going to change it. There's a lot of questions whether that is strictly a matter of safety, which the ministry claims it is, but there's also a pipeline being scheduled to be built through that area, and some of the residents of the valley and some of the First Nations people feel that this move by the Ministry of Forests and the government of BC are really designed to make it more accessible for the pipeline, which has its own problems. I'm generally a supporter of pipelines and responsible resource use and so on. But in this case, the government is pushing an agenda that is running very much against the grain of the people who live in the district, especially in the Saskwa River and the Hazelton area, and the Gittinyao community, First Nations, Gitxsan First Nation. So uh, all I can say is that the government needs to take a step back. And are they representing the people of British Columbia, or are they pushing an agenda on the people of British Columbia? So I've written a letter to the Ministry of Forests. They need to stop and reconsider. There are other alternative plans proposed for that. And I'm sorry, this is this is just one local issue, but it's one that's quite important. Another one locally here has to do with the access to beds for long-term care, assisted living. I mean, that's, I think, a problem across the country and certainly across British Columbia. But in our local community here of Smithers, there is a desperate need for more beds for long-term care, assisted living, and basically seniors housing. We all are facing in British Columbia a housing affordability and availability crisis. And of course, that is being, that problem is being magnified by the move of unfiltered, unvetted, and illegal, some cases illegal immigration to the country. So, we take a stand that Canada, and this is more of a federal problem than a provincial one, but Canada needs to restore a structure to the border so that people who come in as immigrants, as foreign citizens or foreign workers, need to come in carefully vetted, going through the proper channels and fitting in. Right now, that influx, that millions of people have come into the country in the last few years, and that has exacerbated our housing crisis. And the Bulkley Valley-Stikine is not immune from that. We have had, right now it's difficult to find a place to rent, and the cost of houses, if you're on the market looking for a house, has gone up considerably. I suppose if you're selling a house, that's something to be happy about. But if you're looking for a place that you can afford to live in, it's not so good.
Yeah, and you brought up like there is healthcare like chaos, like shortage of doctor, nurses, and also like for senior or caregiver, like a shortage of beds, like for caring of senior citizen. So I had also two guests from BC who are running as an independent candidate. I asked them this question. So is British Columbia short of funds for the health care?
I'm sorry, repeat that. I didn't quite catch that.
I said, like, as you mentioned about the strained in the healthcare system. So is British Columbia lack of funds?
A lack of funds.
Yeah.
Well, this socialist NDP government that we have, Marxist, you would say, has been spending more money than they bring in. They're throwing money around like water on various things, and they're not spending the money in the right places. So, for instance, in British Columbia, every tax-paying citizen is paying for abortions. We're paying for doctor-assisted suicide, and we're paying for this program of indoctrination in the high schools of children regarding LGBT issues, transitioning, sex change, transitioning, both in terms of hormone blockers, puberty blockers, hormone drugs, and surgeries. So a CHP British Columbia government that I represent, the party I represent, we would end taxpayer funding of abortion, of euthanasia, doctor-assisted suicide, and of every form of sexual transition, gender transition, because we believe that is causing a lot more harm than good, especially of young people who, are not of age to make decisions, things that are going to affect them for the rest of their lives. And they're being sucked in by this crazy indoctrination through the BC education system. And we also, one of the things we stand for, yeah, so if that money were diverted, that money that's currently being wasted,
Mhm.
spent on destructive things like abortion and euthanasia, if that money were spent on building new facilities for seniors, assisted living and long-term care, facilities for seniors, and for palliative care units. That's something that Canada has a dire lack of proper palliative care for end of life care. I'm not talking about ending life
Mhm.
like the BC government and Trudeau's government want to end lives that they say are no longer productive or whatever. That's what Hitler said back in the day. He said useless eaters. Well, we don't believe that. We believe that every human being is made in the image of God and has value, and God is the one who decides, when we are born, when we die, and it's not up to us to shortcut that process. My brother, who died of leukemia about 31 years ago, he had the disease for about 8.5 years, and he liked to say every day is a gift. And even though he was often uncomfortable and struggling, in many ways physically, he appreciated every day in this earth. And it's not up to the government to decide when people's time on earth is done. So this government in Victoria is especially onerous in that effect. They have stolen an $8.5 million facility from the Delta Hospice Society. It was a beautiful 10-bed facility where they provided good palliative care, but they refused to kill their patients. But about a kilometer away was the Delta Hospital, where doctors were killing people already. Under this terrible MAID legislation. And of course, BC so-called healthcare is paying for the killing of people. The Delta Hospice Society was not, they didn't build their facility to kill people. They built their facility to give people comfortable place to spend their last days and weeks and months. So this government stole that facility. They said, if you're not going to kill people, then you no longer can function there. They broke a 30-year lease that the Delta Hospice Society had. So one of the things we would do, if I were the premier of the province, if we formed government, we would restore that facility, that palliative care facility, to the Delta Hospice Society so they can do their good work. But the government needs to be building more of these facilities, not fewer. And so it's an indication of their top-down style of government, that they are forcing their agenda on people who do not agree with them, but they've been so arrogant about it. And now now that they want to get reelected, they're starting to soften on a few things like the carbon tax. David Eby has made a statement. Oh, well, maybe if Trudeau lets me, I might take off the carbon tax. Well, that's a phony thing. And they also say, well, they're going to start building these extended care and long-term care and assisted living facilities. They're going to be building more spaces. Well, that's nice to say right in the middle of a campaign,
Yeah.
just as the campaign is starting. But they've been in office since 2017. Why aren't those built already?
Mhm.
If they're so adamant that they're going to do something, why haven't they already done it?
Mhm. Yeah, and sorry, the loss about your brother, and also like the hospice care you brought up, like if so, did they stop funding to that organization because they don't want to assistant suicide?
Exactly. They were not built, that facility was not built to terminate lives. It was built to provide comfort and care for
Mhm.
those in need in the last weeks and months of their lives. So, yeah, first the government pulled back funding, said, we're not going to fund you anymore if you don't participate in the
Mhm.
MAID. And then the Delta Hospice Society came back and said, okay, you can take away our funding. We'll continue to do our good work here without government funding,
Mhm.
uh, which already was a concession. But then the government said, no, no, you can't maintain that facility if you're not going to kill, we do not want you to even exist.
Wow.
And, I'm going to give a shout out here, kudos to Angelina Ireland. She is the president or executive director of Delta Hospice Society. And even though their facility was stolen, even though the government has cut off all funds to them, they are continuing to do what they can do to help senior citizens and those vulnerable citizens in need to manage their lives in the best way possible. And so they have a form that people can fill out. And you know, a lot of people are familiar with the DNR, the Do Not Resuscitate, that's being pushed on many people across the country. But these folks have come up with a DNE, Do Not Euthanize, and you sign that with witnesses, and you're telling the doctor in no uncertain terms, I do not want you to give me a lethal injection.
Mm.
I am not planning to self-evacuate, leave this planet as a result of a personal decision. I'm going to live here as long as God gives me on this green earth. And so I really appreciate their continuing their good work in spite of all the trouble that they've had from this terrible government in Victoria.
Yeah, and so as you are a Christian Heritage Party, which is always educating for people right and anti-abortion or anti-LGBT and also anti-maid policies. So what are you hearing from Bulky Valley-Stikine residents about these things?
Well, you know, of course, the population of Bulkley Valley-Stikine, the population of British Columbia, and the population of Canada is divided on these issues. I think many people have, we use the phrase drunk the Kool-Aid as far as the mass media, not organizations like yours, alternative
Mhm.
media, freelance, but the mass media that is paid for or supported with taxpayer dollars by Justin Trudeau,
Yeah.
they have largely gone along with the narrative, whether it's about abortion, whether it's about gender issues in schoolrooms, whether it is about you know, personal choice of bodily autonomy, whether or not to get vaccinated, whether or not to, you know, be able to fly across the country as the charter guarantees, you know, the right of mobility and freedom of speech. Both the federal government and the provincial government in British Columbia have come against all that. And unfortunately, with the media bought and paid for, their narrative, the government narrative, has in many cases influenced public opinion. And so, yeah, in Bulkley Valley-Stikine, like every other part of the country, there's a core of people that believe what we believe about the sanctity of human life, the fact that we are made in the image of God, that God has plans for us, that He's the one who decides properly when we live, when we die, and He also will. He is the judge of the earth, and everyone, however long we live on this earth, one day we will stand before Him. And of
Mhm.
course, you know, we believe, of course, in Canada, we talk about the Supreme Court. There is a court that is supreme over the Supreme Court.
Yes.
And just because the Supreme Court of Canada has made certain statements about human life and when does a person, you know, become a human being, or when does a baby become a person with rights and privileges, you know, the Supreme Court has made some faulty rulings, and they're not the supreme judge. The supreme judge, they will, those members of the court, those members of the legislature and of the parliament, one day will stand before a just and righteous God who will hold them to account for doing what they knew was wrong. And so we want to be clear as witnesses of, you know, ambassadors from the kingdom of God, ambassadors from a Christian point of view, ambassadors from a biblical point of view, and from what God has put in our hearts, that human life is precious. We have no right to terminate a human life. That is God's decision and timing. And so we want to stand before God and say, we spoke up about
Mhm.
these issues, whether or not it's a popular opinion at the time. many things in the past have been unpopular and have become popular. My dad marched with Martin Luther King Jr. during the civil rights days. At that time, treating every American citizen as the same was not always a popular point of view,
Mm-hmm.
but that point of view has prevailed. That point of view has prevailed, and today people recognize that the color of your skin does not mean you are more or less value to God or to your society. And there was a time, 1929, the women at that time in Canada did not have the right to vote. And, it since has been decided that women are persons, have equal value. And of course, that was always true, but it took a decision of the Supreme Court to make it so. And in, the First Nations people, Native Canadians, Indigenous peoples in Canada, did not have the right to vote as citizens until 1960, and that's a shocking thing to realize. But the reality is today that First Nations people have a right to vote in federal elections, provincial elections, and so we trust that they will exercise that vote and vote for someone who will stand up for equality and justice for all Canadians, all British Columbians in this case.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you brought up like media is playing a huge role to highlighting those issues, like such as abortion, LGBTQ, or other nodes like made, like they are just keep promoting from like taxpayers' money. They are getting media subsidies just to promoting what government says. This is a fact. Maybe somebody disagree with me, but this is real fact, and they are being paid to say what government wants. But how do you see how much a media is playing a role to not giving like a coverage people like you or party like you is suffering, like for not getting as much coverage as NDP or conservative are receiving, particularly in BC provincial election.
Well, yeah, that's always a case. In my particular riding this year, I had the shocking experience that the local paper here in Smithers falsely reported. It was a mistake on their part. I don't attribute it to malice, but they mistakenly reported in August that there were only two candidates in this election, the NDP and the Conservative. Well, that was simply not true. I have been on the ballot on the Elections BC website since March 21st of this year.
Mhm.
And I've run in the last three provincial elections. There was actually no reason why the newspaper wouldn't have been aware of that. But I don't hold that against them. But the reality is that readers of that newspaper for about 3 weeks were under the illusion that there were only two candidates. So even though I think I was the very first candidate to be registered with the Elections BC,
Mhm.
certainly before the NDP, I don't remember when the Conservative Party candidate was registered. But that was a direct misstatement. But in general, we don't get the coverage. I haven't been called by a single news outlet in Bulkley, Valley-Stikine, or anywhere in BC since this campaign began. I am the leader of the provincial party, and of course, if enough people vote for us, we will win.
Mhm.
Uh, People say, "Oh, you can't win; you're too small." Well, that's making a very grave mistake, because parties come and go, and there was a time in my memory when the federal Conservatives were reduced to two seats in the House of Commons. And now they're knocking on the door. They're likely to become the next federal government. And in BC, it's the same. We have had so-called governments. We've had the NDP in office and kicked out of office several times. So I hope this will be another one of those times, because they've certainly abused their privilege of serving the citizens of British Columbia. I haven't seen the service. I've seen the top-down dictatorial policies. So, yeah, the reality is we don't get the coverage that we think that we deserve as a registered political party. But what can we do? We have to do the best we can with what we have. We don't go into debt for these campaigns. So, there's a lot of, I could be buying lots of television, radio ads, whatever, if I had limitless amounts of money. But we're determined to run a campaign that is in the black and that has integrity and is, what would I say, that shows respect for the citizens who have entrusted us with an amount of their finances to fund a small but responsible campaign and to get our message out best we can. I'll certainly will be participating in the public debates, and I'm available for interviews on any issue. I have answered a couple of questionnaires that have come in from various lobby groups or advocacy groups, and I will be answering more of those. Some people have reached out to speak to me as individuals, and we will be getting out doing more door knocking. We've been getting our signs up so far, and I'm also, this is just the way things are. At this point, I am still the leader of the Christian Heritage Party of Canada, and I have some responsibilities to our members and to the public at large and to the party that I can't ignore or get away from those responsibilities. So I am riding two horses. There may be people, if there's those listening to this podcast that live in Bulkley, Valley-Stikine and are wondering, well, how can you be the member of legislature if you're still the leader of the Christian Heritage Party of Canada? And I would say if the citizens of Bulkley, Valley-Stikine give me the honor, the privilege, and the confidence to serve them in Victoria, I would have to step down from my role as national leader. I would put 100% of my effort into serving as a member of the Legislative Assembly, and we would have to hold a leadership convention federally to replace me at that level. But I'm not concerned about that. I will take it as it comes. And if I'm elected, I look forward to serving the citizens of Bulkley, Valley-Stikine and bringing our message of life, family, and freedom, also justice, faith, and righteousness to Victoria.
Mhm. Yeah, and you also mentioned about like not receiving much coverage from media, and also like people also say that it means you cannot win, or you cannot form a government. So how do you see how to change people's psychology for giving an opportunity to an alternative party like Christian Heritage Party? Like we always see BC Conservative, BC Liberal, or BC NDP, as NDP has been in government for almost now a decade. So what should be done to change the psychology of people?
Well, first of all, I think people should vote for what they believe in, regardless of the consequences. Now, there are people, oh, well, then you might get the NDP back. Well, we've been getting the NDP back for many years anyway. If it happens, I mean, obviously, I would like to see every NDP member of the legislature removed from office in this campaign. But one member of the Christian Heritage Party at either federal or provincial level sitting in the legislature or in parliament can make a difference. And that's where people often look at, I mean, they say, well, you can't win. Well, of course I can't win if you don't vote for me. If you believe in what I stand for and you would like to see those ideas promoted both in the legislature and in our community, vote for me and show your support regardless whether I win or lose. And I always believe it's possible. The people say you can't win. Well, that's just a false statement. If enough people vote for me, I will win.
Mhm.
But even if we come short of winning the riding, and that is a possibility, I have to recognize as any other politician that you may win, you may lose. but we have the opportunity to present our ideas. And if I came short of winning, but a significant number of people actually voted for me, they would be showing to their neighbors, to the pollsters, to the media, that there are more than just a couple of us who care about these issues, the issues of life and death, of family integrity, and all these issues of freedom and conscience and so on. So, your vote is counted whether or not your vote goes to the winning person. I have also had people vote. They've told me after an election, oh, well, I wanted to vote for you. I believe in what you stand for, but I didn't want the other guy to get in, so I voted for this third person. And I said, did your third person get in? Well, no, not actually. So I said, so you wasted your vote twice. You voted once against your conscience, didn't vote for what you truly believed in, and then the person you did vote for didn't get in. So you threw away your vote twice. Uh, in terms of whether we can form government, I grant 100% that with two candidates, the Christian Heritage Party of BC will not be a majority governing party in the next legislature of British Columbia. However, one or two members in a minority government can make a huge difference. And of course, we agree with the BC Conservatives on many issues, but we just stand firm on the issues that we think are without the protection of innocent human life. We cannot prosper as a nation, as a province. And so we would stand up for that. We would vote with them on issues where we agree, and we would help them. If it was a minority conservative government, we would certainly stand with them and help them advance the things that we believe in and the views we share together. So one or two members could make a huge difference, and I hope that the voters of Bulkley, Valley-Stikine, and the Skeena districts will consider that when they cast their ballot.
Yeah, and who is the other candidate for your party in this BC election?
That is Irwin Jeffrey, IRWIN JEFFREY, and he is in the city. He lives in the city of Terrace, and he just got his paperwork completed this week. So he will be on the ballot as a Christian Heritage Party of BC candidate. He is running in that riding of Skeena, and he is an optician. That's what he does for a living. But he helps people see better, and he's going to help people in the voters in Skeena to see better about what's going on in government and what they can do to make the District of Skeena and the province of British Columbia better.
Yeah, and so there is also another issue for what BC Conservative is saying, that BC Conservative leader John Rust is saying that he will shut down a safe injection site. So where do you stand? Like, do you think it is a good call?
Yeah, we've been talking about that. I would say long before John Rustad did, when he was still a member of the Liberal Party. We have long said that these so-called safe injection sites are a blight. They're a hazard. They do not help people get off drugs. In fact, they enable the continuation of addiction. And this so-called safer supply or safe supply that this myopic BC government has embarked upon, like they're backing away from it now. They're backing away because the citizens of British Columbia are raising a ruckus about it. Most of the citizens realize that if you want to slow down the use and abuse of drugs, you don't start giving drugs away. And yeah, I understand there's the issue about dirty needles and all this stuff, but the reality is, if we want people to get off drugs, we have to have policies that make it harder to get drugs, not easier. And a lot of the problems we're having with these tent cities and the opioid overdoses and so on are a direct result of BC's very weak and misguided efforts to enable drug users to continue in their habit and not, instead of making it harder and enforcing drug laws that we had, they said, oh, we can't enforce them, so we'll just throw them out the window. And that's the wrong way to go about it. I think they're backing off on that now, again, because an election is looming and they see that they do not have public support for that policy. So I stand firmly, with John Rustad, and certainly if I were a member of the Legislative Assembly and he were the premier, we would work hand in glove on that issue. And I'm glad that he's speaking up about it now. Another thing that he's speaking up about now is SOGI in the schools and this gender orientation stuff that has been pushed on the children of British Columbia. I'm glad he's speaking up about that now, but I do point out to folks that in 2016, when he was a member of the ruling BC Liberal Party, they voted unanimously to add transgenderism to the BC Human Rights Code. They actually fell right into lockstep with the LGBT advocacy community. They thought they were doing a good thing, but I know some of their members were submitted to party discipline. And I don't know where John actually stood on the issue at the time, but he did not vote against it. Not one member of the Legislative Assembly voted against it. I would have voted against it if I had been there. And they couldn't have passed it in one day because they would have had to have proper debate and discussion and input from the public. So I'm glad that John is with us now on that issue. But we've actually been talking about that whole issue since the Corin Agreement, which was signed by the BC Liberal government in 2006, where they basically made a deal with two homosexual men and allowed those two men to influence government policy. And that is still taking place today as far as the influence that they have had on gender issues in British Columbia and in the school system. And so we've been warning about that since 2005, when same-sex marriage was passed in Canada, 2006, the Corin Agreement. And so we're glad when people join us in that discussion and get on our side on the issues. But we just want to note that we've been talking about it, warning about it, long before anyone in the BC Conservatives even was aware of that. I used to call the Corin Agreement BC's best kept worst secret. So.
Mhm. Yeah, and do you predict like we will go back to like what was happening before 2005, before it was not legal for same-sex marriage or LGBTQ, like these things did not matter at the time. Do you think in the coming time we will go back those days? Will it be illegal?
I don't know about illegal. That's a different question altogether. I think there were some legitimate complaints about how people who had made what I consider a poor lifestyle choice, but how they were treated by society. I don't want to go back to mistreating people based on their choices, whether those choices are good or bad.
Yeah.
However, acknowledge, calling it a same-sex marriage when, if people are actually like Pierre Trudeau, father of our current prime minister, said the government has no place in the bedrooms of the nation. That, that was a reasonable statement at the time. But the fact is now what was going on in the bedrooms at that time is now in the classrooms and the boardrooms and the living rooms through television of all Canadians, including young people who are not spared, the details. And so I certainly want to go away from the government endorsement of behavior that I think is harmful to individuals and certainly bad for society. If this is going into federal politics, we would, if the Christian Heritage Party formed government, we would eliminate the category of a same-sex marriage. We believe marriage is between one man and one woman, and we would speak up for that. And I'll speak up for it in British Columbia, although I don't know if the province of British Columbia actually can make any ruling on that matter. But we should not be using the power of government and the power of a subsidized media and the power of a subsidized classroom or education, industry to push that agenda on children of parents who do not agree with it. Parents are the ultimate educators and character builders of their children. They are the ones who have the most invested in the future success of their children, and they should not have these things forced on them, especially at taxpayer expense and against their wishes.
Yeah, and let's get back to the crisis, what's happening in British Columbia, like tenant cities and drug uses in public spaces. Like what should be done to control these things?
Well, there are one thing that should be done is there are cases of legitimate mental illness. We have to begin treating mental illness properly and giving people an opportunity to get out of a lifestyle or a series of bad choices that have led them to a very unfortunate and uncomfortable place of living in these wretched tents in the middle of a city. It's not good for the people that are in those tents, and it's not good for the society around, which is suffering in a lot of ways from crime, threats of violence, and so on. So we need to, tent cities should not be a thing. That should not be how people are living in British Columbia. If we need to build facilities, certainly for drug treatment centers, if someone wants help and wants to escape from a lifestyle that is degrading, depressing, demoralizing, and has no kind of positive element to it, we need to build those facilities and we need to make them accessible. And in some cases where there's violence or outright actions and attitudes that are contrary to the good of society, we may need to restrain people. Certainly we should be putting a lid on the drug traffic where we can, and in terms of housing, basically these people need jobs. Some of them may not be in a position to take a job at this moment. They may not have a car, a phone, a way of getting to a job, or even the desire or the commitment to maintain a regular job that most of us are used to, the kind of way that we operate in society to have a paycheck and the ability to put a roof over our heads. Housing affordability is a huge part of that. One thing we would do, we would restrict foreign purchases of homes, farmland, and so on. That's something that doesn't solve the housing crisis overnight, but foreign money coming both from China and from the United States has pushed up the price of houses. And we need to get back to, young people in Vancouver should be able to afford a home. We're not going to get there by the government handing them money. That's not how it works. We have to get there by the government instituting policies to protect private property and to protect BC from foreign money that, people can come in, billionaires can come in, Bill Gates can come in and buy up whole city blocks or, huge tracts of farmland. No, we need BC homes and businesses and farmland to be owned by British Columbia's citizens and residents.
Yeah, and so where do you stand? Like you said, like there could be like jobs. Like many people many people don't have jobs. Like this could be another problem that people are addicted or using drugs. And if they want to get a job but they don't have any resources, like they don't have a house to live, or a address, or don't have a cell phone, like, or to use to apply. So how government should facilitate them?
It's very difficult. And for a business owner, whether you're a farmer or a manufacturer, when you hire somebody, you want to hire someone who can show up at work on time, someone you can get a hold of when you need to, someone who will, perform their duties without, running out in the back room to shoot up or something like that. So I understand the stresses on business people and why they have to hire the best they can. But everyone is capable of doing something. And I believe it's not the government's job to hire people to put them to work, but it's the government's job to make a level playing field where people can have an opportunity. And if people don't take advantage of the opportunities that are there, their life is not going to be as happy as those who do take advantage. And that goes with education. People put themselves through school to get a good education or a trade, learn a trade. But a lot of it boils down to having an alarm clock. You don't need you don't have to be a millionaire to get an alarm clock so that you can show up to work on time, right?
Mhm.
And there are in the city, there is city transport. There's ways of getting around besides having a car. You probably wouldn't want a car in downtown Vancouver anyway, unless you're wealthy, because you couldn't afford to park it anywhere or put gas in it with the gas with the carbon tax the way it is. Very difficult. Home heating, but we don't solve the home heating problem by having people living in tents with no heating. Uh, we solve the home heating problem by eliminating the carbon tax, and that's another thing we have spoken about for years. I'm glad again that the Conservative Party federally and provincially are on board with us, but we've been speaking about it for years. Carbon dioxide, I'll just say this, is not pollution. Carbon dioxide is a natural part of our atmosphere. It's a natural beneficial gas. Plants need it to survive, and we need plants to survive. So that is a fraudulent scheme, and it has affected a lot of people. It has cost us billions of dollars, federally and provincially, and we need to get back to basics and forget about these pie in the sky things about running everything on electric vehicles, electric energy, because we don't have the capacity to switch over our automobile fleet to electric. We don't have the charging capacity, and people wouldn't like it if we built the charging capacity to do that. So anyway, many, many problems. They're all interrelated.
Yep.
Our government debt is huge, and we need to solve that problem. And we need to have common sense back in Victoria. We need to pay down our debt. No deficit spending. We insist on a mandatory balanced budget. And that, of course, not everybody's going to like that mandatory balanced budget. It means cutting costs. And we have to do that if we're ever going to get our province back on track.
Mhm. Yeah, and thank you so much, Rod. It is always pleasure to have you here. And right now you are running as a candidate for Bulkley Valley-Stikine, and you are a party leader of Christian Heritage Party, but you are not an elected official. So you are always available to appearing on the Sami Parvez show or any other independent media or independent journalist to giving interviews. So can you please comment today that if you get elected, you would still be available to appearing on the Sami Parvez show or to any other independent media or independent journalist?
Sure, I would be delighted to appear on your program as an elected MLA, or if we talk federally, elected member of parliament. But we will keep pushing on the door, and we'll keep bringing the truth to the voters, both in BC and in Canada. And yeah, we should never turn our back on independent media. Right now, I think our country depends on independent media for the truth, getting the truth out there. The mainstream media has been bought and sold, or bought and made subservient to the wishes of government, and that needs to end. And I think programs like yours are part of the solution to an opportunity for voters and citizens to learn things that the mainstream media is not talking about. So I appreciate very much you having me on the program, and I wish you all the best of success in the days ahead.
My pleasure, and thank you so much, sir, for your wishes. Because I asked you this question, I have sent over 40 emails, maybe 50 more than that, to especially to those who are running in BC election. So mostly were denied. Only a couple of like independents, and you are the third one appearing here. Before I had two independent candidates. There are some, but not from those like got elected. Like.
Yeah.
Or from a major party such as like BC NDP or BC Conservative, and also some Greens party, but just like also denied my request. Like you are the only from a party so far agreed and appearing, and we are also at a chat last time. And it is hard to get like elected officials. I always get denied. I don't know why. So that's
Well,
why I asked this question.
let me comment a little bit on that. I do not know what went on in back rooms, why they denied your request, but the reality is in the big parties, there's a lot of control over the messaging, so that, for instance, Pierre Poilievre, he took action. That's federally, of course. He took action when Arnold Viersen, an MP from Alberta, spoke up about abortion. That he got taken to the woodshed by party leader Pierre Poilievre. And, there's that party discipline. They don't actually want their members speaking up on controversial topics, which is a crying shame. We believe the members, especially those who are elected, have both the right and the responsibility to express themselves on matters, even if even if they disagree with their party leader. And I say that to our members. Now, of course, when it comes to protection of innocent human life, I don't know why any person would want to be a candidate for us if they didn't believe in that. And we do ask before we approve a candidate to run for us, we want to know that they support the protection of innocent human life, the support of traditional marriage values and family values, and support for the supremacy of God, which is the foundational statement in the Constitution, the Charter of Rights and Freedoms. After that, if they disagree with me on carbon taxes or on perhaps on the war in Israel or other things, we have a party position, but we would allow our members to speak up on various things and to vote their conscience in the legislature or in the House of Commons. And that, honestly, that does not happen much with the big parties. You see them when they vote, often in Ottawa or in Victoria, it's often along party lines. And I don't think that means that they all agree. I think that means that their MLAs and MPs don't want to be kicked out of their caucus, so they go along to get along. And we think that people should stand up, speak up, and show up and make their voice heard on things that they care about.
Okay. Thank you so much. So what's your message to Bulkley Valley-Stikine? As a candidate, as a MLA candidate, you are running for this riding. So what's your message to the constituents?
Well, I'm asking them to, if they believe in the things we believe in, if they believe in, traditional family values, if they believe in personal freedom, freedom of conscience, freedom of speech, freedom of mobility, if they believe in the protection of innocent human life from conception to natural death, if they believe in balanced budgets and paying down our debt provincially and nationally, if they believe in protecting our borders so that Canada and British Columbia can make its own decisions, not being unduly influenced by outside forces, I'd ask them to give me their vote, help me become their representative in Victoria, because I do want to bring that message to Victoria. And whatever the government is, if it's an NDP government or a BC Conservative government, I would be there to help them pass good legislation and to vote against and speak against bad legislation to try to make the province of British Columbia better and to try to restore confidence in the citizens of Bulkley, Valley-Stikine that we still can make a difference as individuals and as voters. When we do the right thing, we can expect good results.
Okay, thank you so much, Rod, once again for joining me on the Sami Parvez show. It is always a pleasure to have you here and to have lots of discussion with you. Hopefully seeing you again. And sir,
Thank you.
my pleasure and wishing you very best on your election campaign and looking forward to seeing you as an elected MLA.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate it, Sami. Thanks for reaching out to us.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thank you. And thank you so much, sir.
All right.